Moving on to the first panel discussion of InvokeEd Day 2, we have four prolific leaders coming together to discuss leadership practices, characteristics, learning traits, and how other sectors beyond education have been leveraging leadership in amplifying their vision. This session will be moderated by Ms. Bandhana Jha, who's the Vice President, Social Impact and Sustainability, Wells Fargo, India and Philippines. In this role, Bandhana has led some of the most incredible work of Wells Fargo towards social impact, sustainability efforts in India and Philippines. She has set strategic priorities in these areas, overseen execution of companies' philanthropy, grant management, risk control, impact assessment, employee volunteerism, and environmental initiatives. With more than 20 years of experience, Vandana has previously also worked with Bank of America, where she has held the position of head of FSG for global business services. Welcome, Vandana, to InvokeEd Day 2. I also want to take this opportunity to invite and introduce our panelists for this session. First, Mr. Amuleek Bijral. He turned his love for tea into a unique business idea and gave India its one of the first and unique experiences of tea retail chain through Chai Point. As CEO of Chai Point, he is committed to making his branches completely plastic free and is also has achieved it in multiple places, including Bangalore. Thank you so much, sir, for joining in today. We are really excited to hear your perspectives and listen to what you could talk about leadership in context of Chai Point and in context of other industries as well. Mr. Kapil Raizada is the co-founder at Rail Yatri. He's an IIT Kanpur and IIM Bangalore graduate and has had more than 20 years of experience in the industry of enterprise, product services, mobile consumer. Kapil's experience lies in launching multi-million mobile apps across operators spread in Asia, Europe, and Africa. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today in this panel discussion as well. And a third panelist for this discussion is Tian, who's the head of HR at Big Basket and is now also very fondly called the startup HR. He's an IIT and IIM graduate, spent many years in Tata Steel. First as an engineer and then as an HR. He's also a successful author. He has co-authored 3 books, Back to Basics in Management, A Critic in the Fabled Management Mantras, Cut the Crap and Jargon, Learnings from Startup Trenches, and Cutting the Golden Knot, India's Quest for Prosperity. I'm really looking forward to this conversation where education and the context of education could learn a lot about leadership from these diverse sectors. Over to you, Bandhana. Bandhana, you're on mute, sorry.
I'm really honored to be on this session and looking forward to the conversation with you. You bring a lot of energy, a lot of experience to the table, and to actually how the education sector can benefit from this, and there is a huge need for this. I am definitely looking forward, and I'm sure everybody will enjoy this session a lot. I just, while I was going through the introduction, while Neeraj was going through it, I just got to know that Kapil is from Tata. And before I kind of, started with the panel, I just wanted to share a very small story which Kapil may be knowing. This is about a company of Tata's in Jamshedpur. So I have spent a number of years in Jamshedpur, and I got to meet and interact with a number of industries over there because I was part of Confederation of Indian Industry, and Tata is still taking a lead over there. One of the companies, which was 100 years old, was not really doing well, and they invited one of their marketing person to come and lead that company. The gentleman stayed for 3-4 days, watched everything that was good, 3-4 months, watched everything that was going on over there, looked into the books of accounts, looked into everything. And after that, 3 months later, he was announced as the CEO and MD of the company. And then out of everything that he worked into, the company came into profit very soon. And it has been one of the Indian Institute of Management case study. I'm talking about the company called the Tin Plate Company of India Limited. And the person who turned around this organization was no other than Mr. Bhushan Rana, who's a very leading Tata Steel person who has led so many forums and was the CII chairman also, CII chairman for the regional Eastern region. So yeah, with that story, I just wanted to say that crisis, leadership in crisis is a very important thing. And the 3-4 names that comes across on this table, like Chai Point, Rail Yatri, and Big Basket, as well as IntrCity, these are buzzwords today. And how did you, under this crisis situation, the pandemic that we have been in, how did we come forward and how did you lead this company is something going to be very inspirational for all of us to know. So let me start with, the first question I wanted to put across to, this is to Hari. Indian audience has always preferred traditional avenues to shopping, and especially when it comes to grocery. What was going on in your and your team's mind when you were making your market growth strategy for India?
So, Bandana, I will just tweak this question a little bit. Allow me that liberty, because I think, the decision to enter, e-commerce, grocery delivery at home wasn't really a difficult decision, nor was it a test of leadership. I think, the internet had already penetrated the Indian economy. Flipkart, had shown the proof of concept. So people had become comfortable shopping online and ordering stuff online, although cash on delivery happened and, people were willing to, transfer money online at a much later date. But I think people had become very comfortable with shopping online, and the internet speeds had increased significantly. I think the real test came sometime in 2014. 2014 was when, Big Basket was in the market to raise a round. And that was the point of time, when everyone had heard of Tiger Global, everyone had heard of Leaf XL. Leaf XL was the big guy who had bankrolled the entire e-commerce sector. And in 2014, he and Kalyan Krishnamurthy, who was a partner at, Tiger Global, had to come and meet the Big Basket team. So they came on time, and in less than 20 minutes into the conversation, they concluded that your business model sucks and you will be, beaten in the race. There will be other companies that will do well, you will fall behind. And the reason is because you guys run a very, inventory heavy model, asset heavy model, whereas the way forward will be a marketplace model, which is that, it's very asset light. And marketplace model in grocery really means you just station a bunch of delivery boys outside a big bazaar, take orders from customers and deliver them. So that was what they told us. And, SoftBank and Tiger Global are like the church and the Pope. When they tell you something, you believe that the earth goes around the sun. If they tell you that the sun goes around the earth, you tend to believe that as well. So I think what the Big Basket team decided to do at that point of time was stick to its point of view, which is that we know this business. These guys certainly don't know this business. So even if they don't fund us, it's okay. And when Tiger Global decided to fund a rival, it was always very scary. But in spite of that, the call that the team took was that we will continue to do what is right, which is that we will go in with an asset heavy model. And the reason was that because the question as to why customers shop with Big Basket was answered very thoughtfully. And the thoughtful answer was that customers shop with Big Basket because they wanted to avoid a visit to the store. And what's the meaning of wanted to avoid a visit to the store? It really means that if they order 23 items and you deliver 21 items and you force the customer to visit a store for 2 items, they can buy the remaining 21 also from the store, physical store. So it was important to get a 100% fill rate. So the choice of the customers to order with Big Basket was to avoid a visit to the store. It meant that you had to deliver 100% of what they wanted. It also meant that if they wanted fruits and vegetables, you had to deliver fruits and vegetables. If they wanted chilled and frozen items, you had to do that. You couldn't force a customer to visit a physical store for these. And we went down the path of building an extremely wicked supply chain for F&B. F&B supply chain to deliver to the doorstep of the customer has never been done anywhere in the world. And the reason why we did this was that because we believed, that this model will sustain online and home delivery only if we are able to deliver everything that the customer wants. So we took that tough call and, decided not to, bow to the wishes of, the Tiger and SoftBank and make a pivot. So I think this is a sign of character. So I think leadership is always about character, which is, and I would say intellect is about knowing what is right and character is about doing what is right. And there's a big difference between the two, and you need a combination of both to be able to do well in life. So I would say Big Basket's big decision was to stick to what it believed was right, despite the big daddies coming in telling it that you are going to be displaced. So I think that was the thing which was a turning point, and many other companies which went down the path of going asset light actually fell by the wayside and perished. And the only company that went down that path and, made a final pivot to actually, doing an asset heavy mode, and that was Grofers. It's Blinkit now. Anyway, that's a different story altogether. But I would say that this was a sign of character, if you ask me. And you're talking of leadership, this is a very important component of that.
So, Hari, when you say character, is it perseverance? Is it belief in what you have set out to do and to be able to achieve that? Would you just explain that?
It's a very good question, actually, because I know, you didn't let me off the hook by just, allowing me to say character and get away. So you dug deep. So it's very good. See, I think character is not very easy to define, but I would say in very simple terms, it's in having the courage to do what is right. And to me, everything in life is about character. So for example, people believe that good investing is about knowing, how companies work, their financials. I would say it's got nothing to do with knowing companies' profitability, financials, and how, EBIT, all those metrics are not important. It's about character. For example, if you look at Warren Buffett, right? There are many people who understand the financial side of things much better than him, but none of them have character. And what does character in investing mean? Character in investing mean that when the markets are collapsing, you are having the nerve to hold on to your stock because you believe that you made the right choices and the markets will turn and you don't actually begin to sell off. So character is required everywhere. So I think it's about courage in doing the right things. It's about being able to speak your mind. It's about, being afraid, but still saddling up for a ride. It's about walking the talk, I would say. It's about, giving credit, to others when things go right and taking the blame when things go wrong. Some of these things sound very easy, easier said than done. But I think in difficult situations, all of us fail. We tend to take the credit when things go right. We look, away when things go wrong. And all of these are small things, but ultimately, I think they all add up to character.
Yeah. Very, very well conceived and, articulated. Thank you so much, Hari. This is definitely very encouraging for others. And character, we're going to look at this word, more closely. Let me move on to Kapil. So Kapil, today Rail Yatri IntrCity has become India's biggest mobility platform for bus and train travel, has found big backers and raised over rupees 200 crores so far. It's interesting because during early days, I read one of the VCs told you that, and I quote, the business lacked zing, and it was not solving a big pain point from here, there to today. How has the journey been? And now we have 14 million users every month, and IntrCity serves 2.5 lakh passengers every month. How do you see your role as a leader in evangelizing and socializing this idea?
So thanks, Bandana. I think first point, Hari, I think also articulated, one shouldn't take a lot of these VC conversations very seriously. And that was anyways done in a slightly lighter tone. But on a more serious note, see, the way I see leadership is our ability to make everybody else in the organization behave or believe themselves like the leader. And I think somewhere our role as founders is to create that ecosystem that all these leaders can coexist. Give that framework that people, when I say framework, it means give them the bigger direction and vision and create their territories so they understand how they're contributing and how their colleagues are contributing. But in some sense, they all feel leaders of their own smaller universe. So essentially, the way I would measure success is how many other leaders do we have in the organization? And the more leaders we have, the easier it becomes for an organization to evolve, grow, and succeed. So that, I believe, is a strength that has probably seen us through. You talked about last 2 years. Yes, they've been difficult. Have we come out well? We've come out well. We've come out stronger. And primarily the reason is that the onus is not only on the 1 or 2 people at the top. Right? There are, I would say, 10 other leaders who I directly know equally believe not only in the larger picture, but also believe that they are making a difference to it. And they can largely work independently, often giving us feedback to correct and improve also. So my learning in the time has been that how many leaders do we have in the organization? Can we create every employee as a leader? And the better we do it, I think the better is our chances of making that mark out there. And I almost believe that to be a necessity to survive today.
Absolutely. So the role that you play, in any organization, everybody is so important, and they can bring out change in the sphere of influence that they have. They can design and they can look at things and come out with an idea. That's definitely going to be a change maker kind of a thing when you know the things very well from deep inside. Otherwise, many things we can look at from outside and may not be able to. When you understand your leadership role, that how you can play an important role in changing things, that's what moves forward. So very well said.
Practically everything that I know that the next 10 people know it in more depth than I do. Right? I know, and we can support them. We can say, no, this is directionally not right. Let's tweak this. Let's not do this. Let's do more of this. But it's important that there's this collaboration that only comes when they believe that they are leaders, and I think that goes across every level.
The enabler role is very important, and everybody to realize that. So thank you so much. Very well said. With this, let me move on to Amuleek. And chai point is such a big deal in our lives. I can't imagine office without a chai point. So in such a less time, chai point has become a familiar name to all. Amuleek, are your experiences similar to Kapil's? How did you go about identifying the opportunity and shaping the success?
So hello, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here in this forum. I am going to take your question as a continuation of the one that you asked Hari and Kapil. I think leadership is such a diverse topic. I completely resonate with Kapil that we live in a highly complex world, and the leadership onus in any company cannot fall to the top rung. You need to really have a very strong bench of leaders. And how do you create a framework where all of these leaders are raising the bar and taking the company to the next level? Because every leader is also going through his and her own phase of learning. So, and that's really crucial. So Kapil, thank you so much for highlighting that point. From my standpoint, especially in the last 2 years, just to give you some context as to what we went through. So in about 2 months, our business had fallen to 5% of the pre-COVID numbers. And that's quite a blow. 10, 15%, 5% essentially means that you're literally starting from the bottom. Then there was the second wave in which the business fell down again, but it was at 30%. Third wave, it became better, and so on and so forth. So just to give you the context, in the first stage, when you came down pretty much to 5%, right? And at a fairly large scale of revenues and EBITDA level profitability, you have 1,800 people on your rolls, including store staff. So in that sort of a situation, I think in my experience, holding the nerves was easier because you knew that the whole world is experiencing it and you are not cornered out. But I think over a period of time, the COVID experience also highlighted the strengths and weaknesses of various business models, right? In context of Chai Point, we were a completely omni-channel company. We are really dependent on walk-ins. We are dependent on office spaces. We are the fastest growing second largest vending operation. So these two businesses really were hit by a truck. But the delivery part of the business and the packaged product part of the business, which was very nascent, really grew very fast. So, there was an adaptation to the newer business model. And during that phase, the second phase, when the shock element was gone and you were really in the throes of planning and figuring out how to come out of the crisis, was, I believe, the true test of leadership for our company, because you are used to doing certain things in a certain way, and that's a big part of your long and hard-tried success. And suddenly you have to let go of that and start something from the scratch. That is when you start feeling the pain, tension, and challenge in the company, from finance to skill sets to identifying new leaders who are ready for the new skill set. So it's really like, you know, you are repairing one of the engines of an airplane while it's in the air, right? It's like that. And that to me was frankly the biggest test of leadership that personally I've also faced. And I know our entire company faced, because we were literally, our core business model was in conflict with the need of the times. Now, the good thing is that we were able to adapt and we came out of it very strongly. And I think what helped a lot of us and what I personally, you know, rallied to was this quote, which I hold very dear, from Marcus Aurelius, an old Roman emperor. And he said that, and this was really, and I'm not saying it in a flippant way, this really became my anchor during the second phase. And that was, I mean, this is how the quote goes. So, objective judgment at all times, unselfish action at all times, willing acceptance of things, of all things external, and that is all that matters. Now, how do you let go of all the emotions and remember these three things and just execute against these three things while you're doing a lot of stuff which is essential for the company to survive? You know, I mean, from an EBITDA positive company to a company whose core business model is in conflict with the times and therefore managing cash, we were witness to true leadership potential of some amazing people inside the company, you know. And now when I reflect back, and I believe we are coming out of the crisis, we're really looking forward to a very strong and aggressive future. But to, you know, sort of not let your judgment be clouded by short-term fear, by emotions, and trust me, emotions were flying big time at that time. But to be very, very objective, as that quote demonstrated, was the key trait that we at the senior leadership level tried to embody and then tried to send out across the company, right? A big topic, leadership. I thought I could just hopefully lay light on one. Thank you.
And there's a guide star, there is a basic, you know, set of values that you have set. And that leads you to the path that you want to take, where you want to go. So that's how I see it. You know, there has been some kind of a environment that you think that I'm going to work into that. You know, all of those, the Roman quote you talked about, that tells you to stay focused in this manner. So yes, amazing. This is a great story, Amuleek. Thank you very much. How was the next question that I'm going to put to all three of the panelists is, how do you think, and anybody can come first, how was this leadership capacity developed, and how does your organization build leadership within the team? Is there a recipe? All of us have this learning and development, leadership development programs and all of it. Is there any recipe that works for this, or how do you think it is possible to develop leadership in our organizations, in amongst ourselves, as each and every individual we want to go about? Any one of you would like to go first? Kapil, you are on mute.
Yeah, I had some thoughts. Maybe I can go first. I mean, what I have seen is that when it comes to building leaders, the first thing that comes is, I think, giving them freedom to operate. I think that's probably the prerequisite to get started. We cannot be micromanaging or even actively managing and then expect them to become leaders. I think the challenge that we've seen over time is balancing freedom with, I would say, not constraints, but giving active inputs. And I think, so what it kind of comes down is that when you give somebody freedom, a new person in the system, how frequently are you engaging with that person, so that, you know, that alignment happens in the shortest possible time with minimum amount of any collateral damage. I think that's the balance we're all trying to walk. And probably I'd also say it also comes with some appetite to accept some collateral damage, right? Not because one is being generous, but frankly, we've all done that collateral damage ourselves. We may not remember about it, but it's an inevitable part of the journey. So I think it's just one's ability or appetite to manage that risk versus reward. And I think once those two things are in place, believe me, I have never found any person, and I must have worked with hundreds and hundreds of people so far, who are themselves not committed and keen to make a difference to the group that they join. I mean, every person comes on board, they're excited, they're looking forward to making a change, they want to make a difference, they come with ideas. I think the onus is always on us, that can we give them that kind of a freedom and kind of give them that kind of a balance of inputs or guiding and spending time, investing enough time with them that they ramp up. And if that is done, then I think one has a very high probability of success.
Thank you very much. Hari, Amuleek, would you like to contribute to this thought?
Yeah, sure. So, I firmly believe that towards the goal of creating a strong organization, it all starts by first and foremost by being careful in selecting the people that you want to be a part of your team. And, young companies and startups are often in a hurry to staff, grow and deploy the invested capital, that this aspect of having the right framework for selecting people is missed. And frankly, it's a tough skill. I think I've only started paying attention to it as a leader in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. Now it's an important thing that we try to socialize and make it not dependent on few people to have the onus to get the right people, but sort of create a framework of selection which allows the right people to come in. Right people is in context of the sector. It's not necessarily an absolute skill. It's also in context of the size and scale of the company. So selecting the right people is one very important part towards creating a leadership environment, because you need to have certain base level of readiness. Other than that, I think 3 things which we as a team have started believing in very strongly, which I believe act as a good framework for building leaders. And these are, number 1, the concept of picture of success. I think as seniors, our goal, driven by our sense of the future vision, as well as our past experience in building a certain enterprise, the picture of success clarity is the onus of the senior management, and how actively and clearly you are talking of picture of success in context of projects and not only overall at a BU level or a company level is a great discipline, because it allows the younger leaders to center on the most essential, which is the end outcome, in a very clear manner. So the picture of success, concept is a very important one. The second is clarifying what are the operating principles in which the leaders and employees in a company need to work. And the operating principles are both guardrails as well as context-driven tips, which are very important. So, so for example, when a certain software is being built, one key operating principle might be to first arrive at a build versus buy call. Is it a build decision or is it a buy decision? So it can be as specific as this to, slightly more mid to long term, as in what is the target growth rate that we need to take for this particular product. So the concept of operating principles before you really dive deep into the details is a very important one. And I think this is a great leadership enabling tool, because then the younger leaders not only have a picture of success, but they are also clear of the guardrails and key elements that they need to keep in mind. The last stage is the operating framework stage, where something which is very specific to the task is shelved out. And that invariably should be left to the team is what I believe, but giving them some tools as to what are the basic frameworks or visual representation basis with which operating framework should be built and communicated helps a lot. So, at a very tactical level, I think these three concepts are something that we very strongly believe in. Thank you.
Great, Amuleek, thank you very much. And this concept is definitely very important. Shall we move on to Hari?
Yes. So, you know what, Bandhana, I think some individuals are gifted when it comes to specific talent or specific skill, and they are extremely good at it. It comes to them naturally. And I think leadership is one of those. So I really believe that, some people are inherently better placed to lead than the others. I'm not trying to say that, leadership can't be learned. I think to a large extent it can be learned as well. The universal mode of learning is probably, observe people who are good at it, imitate them for a while, and then become better and better at that. In terms of creating capacity, I think leaders need to do multiple things. And I think Amuleek as well as Kapil have covered some of them. And I think to a large extent, it also depends upon the ability as well as, the willingness of that leader to be able to create that capability. So I think ability is about, figuring out that I need to hire some people who are smarter than me. It's about being able to realize that the first step towards creating leadership capacity, as Amuleek said, is to hire right. Because if you don't do it very thoughtfully, if you don't get the right people on board, you will never be able to create that capacity. So the first step is to get that hiring piece right. So ability to understand that creating leadership capacity is to first hire the right kind of people. So I think that's a very important realization. And on top of that realization, you should also quickly learn the tools and skills on how to recruit correctly. How do you avoid making some of those mistakes? So I think, leaders can create capacity when it comes to leadership on a daily basis. I think leadership is never created in the confines of a classroom. It's always created in the work environment. A large part of leadership is really being exposed to difficult situations, difficult problems to deal with, being thrown into the deep end, being given very stretch goals to, solve. So I think all those are very key elements. I think leaders have a role to play in creating this environment where everybody is trying to stay on their toes, trying to learn, become better every day. So for example, if you're sitting in a monthly review meeting, and if you're a leader of the company, the CEO or the founder, that's a great opportunity for you to spot talent. It's an ability to see, how your middle managers who are part of that review meeting are performing. How many of them are smart? How many of them are able to think on their feet? It's a great opportunity, to spot talent. It's also a great opportunity to help people learn problem solving. So I think leaders also have a role to play as teachers, which is how do you create those amazingly insightful conversations? And as Kapil said, you don't have to tell people what to do. You don't have to control them. I think you can show them what is the right way of doing things. And that's enough for the smart people. Smart people look at you if you're doing the right things, if you are empowering your team, if you are asking the right kind of questions, and that is helping solve a problem. They will realize that, asking questions is an important thing. Asking smart questions is an important thing, and they will learn that power. Just by telling someone, you need to ask smart questions, they will never learn it. But then if you demonstrate that, so I think leaders can do multiple things: hiring people smarter than themselves, hiring correctly, empowering them, creating every forum, using every forum to create learning opportunities, all of that. So I think, it's a very complex subject, but I just try to touch on 2 or 3 things.
Very beautifully answered, definitely. So while we are talking, Hari, can you, this pandemic, that threw up a different kind of challenge. While, Chai Point as well as IntrCity would have faced different situations, Big Basket might have had another kind of challenge, which is catering to a huge number of, more customers and like that. How do you think leadership managed this situation and came up with, the methods in which they can cater to the demands that may be there?
See, Bandhana, I think I would just stay by saying, Chai Point went through a very difficult time. 5%, of pre-COVID revenues. I think that's a near-death situation. And I think Amuleek and his team demonstrated amazing leadership. And I think there's a lot to learn from those stories. And I think Big Basket was in a very lucky place. And there was absolutely no sign of, no need for demonstrating amazing leadership, because people began shopping online. They began coming to us. I know. I'm coming to that. So I'm saying it's a good problem to have. Solving for good problems is not such a great indication of leadership as, dealing with a near-death situation, recovering and holding your fort and doing all of that. So I think the best learning can come from Chai Point and Amuleek. But nevertheless, let me tell you how Big Basket dealt with, skyrocketing growth. So obviously, the problem that we had was that demand went up 500%. Obviously, people stopped shopping in physical stores and everybody began placing online orders. And there was no supply of people because you needed people in the warehouses, you needed people who could deliver, and supply dropped by 20%. So imagine demand going up by 500% and supply dropping to 20%. So there is no way in which we could have delivered orders, these kind of orders. So we had to think on our feet. We had to, tell everyone, just let's think of what's the best way. And most of the answers never really came from people who were sitting in the head office. Most of the answers to these problems came from people who were operating in the warehouses. And for example, we realized that we had an assortment of 25,000 to 30,000. In the pandemic environment, we didn't need this assortment because all customers wanted was about 1,000 SKUs. They just wanted about 1,000 things to be delivered in a very reliable way. So we figured out, delivery, pickers in the warehouse are walking 20 kilometers a day to pick because these items had been stacked at different places. Now, what we decided was that we will, rejig our entire planogram and we'll co-locate all these 1,000 most essential items and make them available. We worked with, for example, the manufacturers of these products and ensured that they were supplying to us on time. We figured out how to increase productivity of our warehouse staff. We figured out how to increase productivity of our delivery staff. We said, why don't you guys in a community place a bulk order? So instead of our delivery boys, going to 100 houses in a community and delivering them to 100 individuals, we will pick in bulk and deliver them in bulk at your gate. And then you guys can figure out how to distribute the products. So we did a lot of these things. And I think, I'll be the first to confess, this is not a particularly great sign of leadership. I think it was an opportunity that came our way. We thought about it smartly and we were able to deliver. For example, we figured out how to queue customers because customers were coming to our site and slots were just not available. So we had to figure out how to give them tokens, how to, create a queue system. So we had to improve, the product. We had to work on the product side, tech side, how to make contactless deliveries. How do you bring all the changes on the tech side to be able to reflect all of this? So a lot of small things got done innovatively, but not the greatest sign of a crisis or how to manage in a crisis. I think Chai Point is the perfect example.
Thank you so much, Hari. And that brings me to Amuleek. What do you think? What were the innovative steps that you had to take in order to actually, you talked about it, some bit of it, but what will you say 2-3 steps that was required as innovations in order to come out of this pandemic situation?
And I think, across the business lines, morphing into a direct-to-consumer packaged product company, where leveraging the strength of brand, we were able to launch multiple products and make them available to customers across platforms. So literally, this was like a new business line which got established. We had packaged products, but earlier, pre-COVID, but they were more in the spirit of merchandise across the stores. So coming out with a D2C line, and now that's one of our fastest growing businesses, and a reflection of the resilience of and the recall of the brand was one such element. The second element was really around how do you organize your teams? And I think from the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges that we had was that some of our businesses just crashed down, right? I mean, the office vending space for 6-7 months was pretty much zero. And that was our fastest growing and most profitable business pre-COVID. So I think one of the most important things which we did was to undertake a highly rigorous, merit-driven people stack ranking across the company, right? I mean, it was really done with the intent of not rewarding, but frankly rewarding, as well as identifying the bottom tier so that we are able to take decisions around the cost and making the company leaner in a much more smarter fashion. That entire exercise being done in a way where it was communicated to the entire company that, guys, we are a sports team first and foremost. Thankfully, as a management team, we've always been very clear as to how we present the ethos of the company. So, for example, we never said since the inception of the company that we are a family and every employee is a family member. And I think, frankly, that's bunkum. At the end of the day, we are in a competitive world. So we were always very clear in communicating how, as a sports team, everybody needs to justify their position, their standing, and nobody could take themselves for granted. And you need to live up to this spirit, not only in context of good times, but also bad times. So this entire HR-driven initiative, where we, from a positive side, arrived at the top 100 non-negotiable talent, right, was a very important one. And then we were able to convince our board that ultimately we are a long-term asset. The brand is very strong. And irrespective of the environment, these 100 people we need to take care of. So we took care of them in terms of hikes, in terms of making sure that their long-term vesting into the company through ESOPs was really tight. And I think that exercise done in a time of crisis, but with a lot of positivity, so that the meritocratic ranking is seen as a positive initiative, was a really innovative way of thinking, around this topic in those times. And then there were a lot of tech-driven interventions. I mean, frankly, as the market opens up, the innovations on the tech side that we have done are path-breaking for the sector. And I'm saying it with a lot of excitement. I mean, to give you a simple example, we were the first ones to introduce the concept of contactless vending. So you have vending machines in which you have to touch, and we were all having Android-based vending machines, but nobody wanted to touch machines, because even after the second, third wave, when offices really started coming up, people wouldn't go to office and they were uncomfortable that, so many people are touching the machine and why should I touch it? So without forcing anyone to install a browser, we came up with this dynamic QR code. If you scan it, the menu of the machine, and that specific machine for that specific site, the menu of the machine came on the browser, and you could operate the machine literally on your phone and dispense the beverages. This simple initiative allowed us to increase our market share, if not revenue. See, people stopped taking COVID as a permanent thing sometime along the line. They were also preparing for the future. So we were operating with a mindset that the revenue may not be coming right now, but let's acquire market share. So this sort of an innovation allowed us to acquire a tremendous level of market share. And then was, fun. The most important area of innovation was on the back end. What did we do with our finance? How did we completely restructure the finance team? How did we completely reorganize the procurement infrastructure? We adopted ZBC, or zero-based costing, which is an automobile industry-driven procurement engine. And we rolled out software tools, again, with a view that another 6-8 months, this is going to be history. How do we invest our time, which frankly was more available to be spent on the back end, to make sure that our gross margins and our margin story went to the next level? Likewise, on the supply chain side, state-of-the-art cloud-based transport management, logistic management, supplier relationship management, and warehouse management software systems, because the company was increasingly taking on an FMCG packaged product like you, and that share of the business was clearly increasing. So the innovation stream really cut across multiple initiatives. The advantage of having an in-house software team really came to fore during this period. But I must say that, the back-end regrouping, re-architecting was something that we really put the period to good use, for good use.
Thank you so much, Amuleek. Yeah, it's a lot of work done at the back end while all this, we were waiting for the times to get better and go back to the normalcy that it offered. Yeah, thank you so much. Kapil, can you put this question to you? How did it affect travel industry, and how did you come out with any innovativeness in your approach to the problem? Yeah.
But it was slightly different for us. I think the similarity was that even our business came down to near zero. You know, when lockdowns happened, travel in the first year was actually zero. Second time it was near zero, right? I think the key question that we ask ourselves is, I think, one from a team perspective, right? I think first step was to acknowledge that there is a problem. And second, to acknowledge that we don't have the solution always to kind of get out of it. So the first step we did was to assure the team that we have the strength to see this through. And at that time, we had forecasted that the entire impact may take 12 to 18 months. This is what I'm talking 2020. Right? We forecasted that it may take us 18 to 20 months to get out of it. And we planned our business saying that we at least need to have the strength to see this for 2.5 years, adding for some buffer on top. So our first step was to tell our team that we have the strength to lay low and continue for 2.5 years. So we have enough time. Right? That's enough time for us to foresee most of the challenges that we forecast. That's on the worst case scenario. Right? And the second thing that we said is that now that we have time, what do we do with it? Right? And a lot of things came up. We pulled out all the complaints that we had heard in the last 1 year. Right? We pulled out all the requirements that all the good new stuff that we wanted to do in the last 1 year, which we had postponed. Right? Because when you are in the running business, it's always you're busy in servicing the customers who are coming in. You rarely have that luxury of going back and cleaning your storerooms, cleaning your office, cleaning your desks. And we felt this was the ideal time to strengthen all the nuts and bolts of the ecosystem so that when the window opens, we should be the fastest and the strongest. So we spent almost the first 3 or 4 months in essentially setting up and clearing up all the old pipeline. We replaced a lot of third-party components that we had. We replaced them with internal softwares. There were some large initiative projects that we wanted to, that we felt were important for us to be able to control the travel experiences out there. So a whole lot of redesign and engineering got happened. And I think in the first 6 months of the introduction, we probably built the maximum number of new features and capabilities that are seeing us well today. Right? So I think it was important at step one to give people comfort that we will see this through. Right? Second is to say that let us be the best when the window happens. We don't know if it could be 6 months, it could be 12 months, right? But let's be best over there. And I think the third, underlying fundamental belief was that we said this business is not going to go away. This is not a thing that that people will start moving. Nobody's going to travel. People will start doing online. We said it could happen in the home to office segment, but long distance segment we don't foresee the demand going away. Right? So that belief that the demand is fundamentally will always be there, and this is a great time to increase our share of the market. I think those three things held us in fairly good stead to kind of weather this through, if I may use that phrase.
That was very enlightening, and thank you so much for all of these. So what I understand from this entire conversation that I had, this faith in this end vision is very important, that you are going to get there, and you can work with the environment around you. You keep the environment motivated. So one of the challenge that I think, while as a leader you believe that you are going there and you have a path very clear to you, how do you think you take the team along and continue that faith that you have? It must be one of the challenge that all of you must have faced at one point or another. Because again, when we look at in the context of this program that we have today, education in the times of crisis, like how do you drive that leadership role over here? Because again, during pandemic, we have gone through, the education sector has gone through a very, you can say, children have not been able to go to school. Some of the programs that were being regularly delivered, so that has not happened. And people have come up with a lot of innovative ideas to how to cater to the community, be able to go back to the school. There are principals, headmasters, teachers who have ensured that this studies, the learning that happens with the children, that continuously goes on. But in this whole process, how do you think you can, you can keep the this leadership role being played by all the other around you, the team, the larger team? How do you think you can keep them motivated and think about how they can achieve the end result that they have been wanting to do that? Please, any of you share.
So firstly, I mean, I'll just, sorry, I didn't realize, I thought this was our thing, but maybe I'll just go on.
Okay, please go ahead, yeah.
So firstly, I mean, I think leadership should not cause us stress. Now that I am the leader, I have to do everything. I don't think it really works that way. But one small trick that
it comes from within to take the leadership.
It comes from within, and you usually have people along with you to participate in that. But I think one thing I've seen usually when things go bad, it helps to stop thinking too much about the problem and instead think about the solution. I generally found it's quite a de-stressing thing that when there's a problem, you finally come down to ki karna kya hai, now what needs to be done. And then you decide what needs to be done, and then you get busy in doing it. After that, there's no point thinking about the problem again and again. What's going to happen next month? What's going to happen next month? I've already thought what's going to happen next month, and I've decided that there are 2 things I need to do. So now let's get busy doing those 2 things. Right? The first question I think should be thrown out of the window. Unless you believe there is a reason to revisit what we thought we need to do. If the action is not under question, then there is no point thinking about the consequences. Because that's only going to slow you down. So helps me quite a bit, translate the problem into a potential solution, translate into a set of tasks, and then jump into doing the task. That itself, takes care of, at least from my thought process, I think I just, then helps me kind of handle it better.
Amuleek, would you like to?
So I think the way, I would see it is that, the ability to deal with a crisis is built well before you hit the crisis, which means that what you do during peacetime decides how you are able to manage that crisis, which means that, if you build an environment of trust during peace times, if you treat people well during peace times, if you don't hire and fire, indiscriminately during peacetime, I think people will generally be loyal to you. So I think you cannot, think of, this is a crisis and this is going to, be the place where I will learn my leadership skills. I think leadership and the ability to handle a crisis is all built well before that. I think reputation, trust, the way you treat your people, everything, there is an image, reputation that gets built. And if you've done all the right things, people will be more sympathetic to you. They will stand by you in difficult times and they will be with you.
I would, I think my starting quote here, frankly, was my anchor. So if one thinks very calmly about it, that's what it comes down to. It's objective judgment, unselfish action, and then willing acceptance of things external. That's one part. The other part, and this is what, Kapil also said, and completely resonate, that this is a moment where trust currency has to be used. And the trust currency is used only on the basis of the past track record, the past culture, and faith in overall leadership. In times of crisis, I would like to say that the onus on senior leadership is a lot high. And especially in a time like COVID, it was not a normal scenario. Right. And the second wave came in with a lot of emotions, and where a lot of immediate family members and friends and, folks were impacted. So the faith on the senior leadership, I also believe during times of crisis, is a lot higher. And the senior leaders need to appreciate that. And that is where I firmly believe that one should remember that there is no such thing as over communication. There is only under communication. So the role of the leader and leaders to communicate sometimes very, very simple things, sometimes very fundamental things, but mostly talking about the long-term vision and long-term prospects and how it is temporary. And you're all surrounded by smart people, so you need to have your facts right. You need to be supported with logic, and just raw emotion is not going to cut it. But communication and the role of communication in a time of crisis is also something which I say is extremely important.
So much. These are golden words, from and a lot of things to be taken away by all of our audience today. I'm sure in the education sector also, all the attendees who are here, who somehow are connected with it, NGOs, the corporates like us, who have been funding different projects, as well as all the teachers and headmasters and also students, they kind of needed to take up the leadership role, and they have very well achieved that. They have done that. I just wanted to share a story which Shiksha Lokam team only shared with me, is about a school in Uttar Pradesh where a children's school, the government school that was there, they didn't have a wall around it, and it was a co-ed school, and the girls were going there and the boys were there as well. But the children, nobody realized that this could be such a big problem for them. So the children themselves came up and they kind of visited the panchayat, and they told them that they don't have a wall around the school, which creates a lot of negative environment for them. There may be so many things going on over there. Anybody can jump into the school and be there in those premises. And that was, then it was realized as a problem, and the panchayat took it up, and they kind of took steps to ensure that there is a wall around it. So in our roles, in whatever role we are there, in whatever circumstances we are there, there is a leadership there, a role that we need to play. We need to look around, see what kind of change we can bring into the environment. In spite of crisis, the leaders, as they talked about, how we are able to move forward, and achieve our end goal that we want to do, and keep the team encouraged, motivated to be able to achieve that. So I think these are the messages that I would like to take from these very August gathering out here. Thank you very much, Amuleek, Hari, and Kapil, to have given your time and shared your story with us. And it's such encouraging story. I'm sure each one of the team member, each one of the member over here who has attended the session would have definitely taken so many ideas from here, so much motivation from here, and they'll be able to emulate it in their life. So thank you very much. I think I'm right on time. And over to the Shiksha Lokam team. I will just say thank you for organizing this session and giving us a chance to come here and share the thoughts from the industry sector.
Thank you so much, Vandana. Yes, you are right on time. We've been able to close this well. Thank you so much, Hari, Kapil, Amuleek, for sharing those awe-inspiring experiences and insights on leadership, and especially those stories of how you've been dealing with COVID and those leadership practices that you've been able to drive in your organizations, within your people, especially in these difficult times. I think there's a lot for us to learn from there. I think, like Bandha mentioned as well, education and pandemic have had a deep correlation, and the impact has been massive. Definitely, these practices are something that we can take back. Thank you so much for that again. I hope the audience also has had an array of emotions, triggered a lot of thoughts, triggered a lot of ideas in terms of what we can do. And I hope it comes back to our heart core value of today, the idea of hope. And I think all the four of you have been able to bring that piece into this conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, again. Yes, Mohan, I think just a chat here saying so many thoughts. Absolutely. I think that's something that I resonate with as well.
Thanks, Vandana. Thanks, Neeraj.
Thank you all. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.